So thanks for the opportunity to do this today. I really appreciate it. For those of you I have not met previously, my name is Joe Farrell. I'm the Director of Clinical Integration for Biospatial. Biospatial is if you're not familiar with us, we are a data analytics platform. We work mostly with state EMS offices to provide analysis for the state EMS offices that they can then roll out to local EMS agencies. So if you're curious about whether your state is participating with biospatial, please feel free to reach out to me. If you are participating but don't have access, we can get you in connection with your state EMS office and the folks that will take care of that. I am rearranging windows since I had everything set up nicely before I came in. There. And please feel free to jump in with any questions as we go through. I'm really like that more than me just talking nonstop. So I will try to pay attention to the chat as we're going through and try to keep up what everybody is doing with the Halloween costumes too. So I'm going to bring you in at the very top of our platform for those you haven't been in before and can see kind of how to get in and get to where we're going with the EMS performance measures. We have about 140, 150 EMS performance measures, both on our EMS performance dashboard and resuscitation dashboard that are available for you. I'll show you those and show you specifically the ones we're using for the Airway Collaborative. We set up a couple of saved queries for that, but this is our homepage landing page. I use 1Password because I can't keep all my passwords straight. So I'm going to log in here, come take you to the homepage. Homepage has a lot of different options available for you. We have a variety of dashboards kind of geared for different things. What we're going to look at today is our EMS performance dashboard. But just to point out a few things that do have access that sometimes people miss, you kind of fill this screen up when you come in. If you scroll down a little bit for those of you with access, we also have some notes and updates here at the bottom. That's where we post all our release notes every month or every 6 weeks when we do a release. And also we have some use cases you scroll through here. We have put together for back when Lights and Sirens Collaborative was going on, we did a use case for the Lights and Sirens Collaborative with some saved queries available. So I'm going to jump right into the EMS performance dashboard. So this is our general default EMS performance dashboard. When you come in, we have the NIMSQA measures at the top, some Coverdell measures down below. I have gone ahead and set up a saved query, which I'll pull up and kind of show you how I constructed that. But for all the performance measures, so you know what you're looking at, we have put in underneath this help page all the definitions that we have available for how do we construct the performance measures. So like I said, we have all the NIMSQA measures. We have the previous FAIR measures still in there. They're still being used in Florida and some other places. You can come down if you want to look at the Airway 01 endotracheal, see how we calculate that. We have all the definitions available so you understand exactly what data elements we're looking at to pull both the denominator and the numerator. I'll also mention we are in the process of updating Airway 01, Airway 05, and Airway 18 right now with those changes NIMSQA has done. Those should be implemented by the end of the year. And then once we do have them in, we will redo all the data in our platform and reevaluate it to see how it matches up with the new definition. So if you come in after the first of the year, to pull these definitions, you won't be comparing an apple to a different type of apple. It's all going to be the same calculation across the board. Is that? So like I said, I mentioned I had a save query here. So I'm going to load that save search that I already created just so you don't have to watch me hunt and peck through the search criteria. So this is going to pull up my Airway Collaborative for adults. And give me a little moment. So you can see I did the Airway 01, endotracheal, Airway 18, and respiratory 02 at the top. And I went through and just for entertainment purposes, I put Airway 01 advanced and Airway 01 supraglottic down on the performance measures 2 section. I want to talk about how I constructed this and what the access rights are before we really dig into the widgets of the dashboard. So this requires operational access to be able to see this dashboard at all. So if a user doesn't have operational access, they will not see anything. Most states will roll out operational access for an agency's data to that agency. So if you come in here as an agency, load this dashboard, what you'll see in this group agencies will only be that access you've been specifically granted. Now, we do have a series of benchmarks available too in our platform. Most states are sharing a statewide benchmark. We have a biospatial national benchmark available, so you can actually compare benchmarking. And some states have actually broken down to have regional benchmarks. Illinois actually did a benchmark based off agency volumes, a high, medium, and low volume agencies, so they can compare themselves. Florida has rolled out a rural benchmark for their 40-some rural agencies. So there's available benchmarks depending on what your state has done or what your state has granted access to. Somebody asked if I stopped sharing. I don't think so, but let me check. It says I am screen sharing. Is everybody else seeing my screen?
Yeah, I can still see your screen.
Okay. So over here in the search criteria, I'm going to show you, there's a lot of search criteria to choose from. I'm going to limit down just to show you what I selected for this query. So I click the active filters here on the side. I've got a date range going from January 1st, 2023 to 10/31/2024, just to get that full range. I have binned things by month. Our default would actually go to a weekly binning on this, but I forced it to go to a monthly binning. I'm displaying a biospatial benchmark, and I'm looking at only with a minimum age 18 years or older. So those are the only search criteria I set in the search criteria. Coming over to the dashboard widgets themselves, I also selected those three measures. We have all the measures available here. I selected those three that are part of the collaborative. And if you want to add different measures or look at different measures for other purposes, you can pretty quickly do it by just starting to type in what you're looking for. There, for an example, I started to type in Coverdale, and I can see all the Coverdale measures we've placed in there. So if you're looking for specific measures, you can quickly find them that way. This data I did not. Let me do the number overlays. There's a toggle here. We can do a number overlay, and you can look at both percentages or raw counts. Now, right now you see everything matching up because I selected all agencies. I'm trying to mask anything specific to any specific agency. So you see right now my biospatial national benchmarks match my grouped agency benchmarks. But if you have only access to your agencies, what you'll see in that grouped agencies are the specific performance for that agency. Yeah, Tim, I actually have a couple, I just saw your text or your message about sharing the search criteria. I actually have a couple saved queries I put together that I think we're going to roll out to you guys after this presentation. There's just actually a couple, in fact, I'm updating them right now with something I thought of this morning. So we'll share those with you guys. We'll send those out. Looking at what we're displaying here too, and actually I'm not going to do this because it's going to expose agency names, but if you don't like the group agencies, if you only have one agency you're working with or a couple agencies, you can ungroup those agencies and you'll see each individual agency splayed out. Or if you're only a member of one agency, it'll actually put your name of your agency in there instead of saying grouped agencies. For displays and export, I think that's a lot nicer looking than just showing grouped agencies. So on the measure itself, I'm going to look at this Airway 01 to begin with. You can see with Airway 01, we have 27% of the time we know that's true. So first intratracheal airway placement without hypotension or hypoxia. But we have a 51% in this white box, and that 51% is 51% of the time we do not have the data to calculate the numerator. Something was not included. And again, if you go back and look at the numerator, that means these things were not included in the EPCR for us to be able to calculate and say whether it was a true or a false. So we thought those things were important to show just because you need to know what's not being documented. It's not necessarily that only 27% are being intubated without hypoxia. You have this 51% we just don't know. Now, adding those up, the other ones had hypoxia or hypotension involved in the intubation attempt. To get a little more information about what's going on with that, you come down, I'm going to come back up EMS performance by time, but we have a performance records table where I could load those records. And I have masked anything that is agency specific here. There's a column visibility. So let me start first. I can select my Airway 01 endotracheal here and say, if I want to dig into these unknowns to see what is being documented, I come down and say, show me the unknowns and apply that. And then this dashboard is going to populate just with those specific records from my agency where it was an unknown for Airway 01 endotracheal. I can then, I'm not going to do this since we're being recorded and we're live data here, but I can expand this with the plus sign here. And I can actually then open up the transversal XML to look at what values were submitted and if those airway things that we're looking for here. The columns themselves can also be adjusted. So I'll show you, like I was trying to mask anything specific to an agency right now. So I took out event date, incident date, state, incident county, but I can add any of these things in, and I'll scroll over here a little bit. I added in the Airway 01, Airway 18, and Respiratory 02 metrics. If I can add metrics, there's just a ton of stuff. I'm trying to skip by all the different metrics because there's other things at the bottom too that you can add in. So we're looking at like APOT times we can add in, we can look at outcomes, we can see what destination facility they went to, where the incident location was at. There's a lot of other criteria we can select also on this performance records table. This can also be exported as CSV file. You can select additional columns. We also have some columns that, no, on this one we do not. We have the additional columns you can select. On the advanced search dashboard, you can actually export the narrative too and review the narrative of certain calls. But we do not have that available on this dashboard. But I think the record, I don't think there's a limit anymore. We think it's like 50,000 records you can export on the table now. That does get logged so we know who's done large exports. Like I mentioned, you can also select additional narrative pieces. We do have the extras. So you could select the narrative, notified scene, medical history, other available fields that are not showing up on the table. You can also select to include on the export. And that just exports as a CSV file. Before I go back and hit some other things, some more specific things, just want to see if there's any questions at this point. Anybody have anything I skimmed over too fast you'd like me to come back to? Very quiet. It's always.
Can you use this for a single agency?
Yeah, so if you have access for a single agency, just your agency will show up here if you have access to the platform for that agency. So in fact, you're only going to see on this dashboard, you're only going to see your agency's information that you have been granted by the state office to be able to view. You won't see any other agency's data on this platform other than the benchmarks.
Joe, could you show one more time where the button is to export the records table?
Yeah.
I missed that.
It's right here. Now, this, I should give a caveat here. I'm glad you brought this up. This has to be granted by the state EMS office to give access. Some state offices have said, yeah, we're going to allow bulk export to occur, and some state offices have restricted that use. So if you don't see that CSV file button, that means your state office hasn't granted that access.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Just have one quick question about the percent unknown. Once they're in there and they have one of the denominators is unknown, there's no way to correct that, right? There's no way to like manipulate the measure to get the missing part out. It's just a documentation from the provider end.
Yeah, not within our platform. You can't, our platform is essentially, think of it as a view only platform. But if you change the data in your ePCR software, resubmit it to your state data repository, we will get that update and we will update the records here.
Okay, thanks.
Looks like there were cardiac arrest center. Bill, I just saw your text. I have to go check the definition. Yeah, cardiac arrest, yes, prior to EMS arrival is an exclusion. Yeah, Bill sent a question saying, looked like there were cardiac arrest in Airway 01. Aren't those exclusions? And the prior to EMS arrival is an exclusion. Any other questions at this point? Since I started talking about some of the buttons, and I want to point out a couple other things for the performance by measures, and a lot of our widgets have these available. There's also the ability to export this as a CSV or as a PNG file. So you actually will download this chart with the transparent background that can be drag and dropped into a PDF or into a Word document, a PowerPoint, whatever you want to do there. And you can also download the CSV file, the actual numbers behind this. So if you're looking at the actual numbers and want those to manipulate or to track, you can pull those out with the download CSV. Continuing to come down. So this is one of the things I'm working on right now to finalize these links for you guys. I know you're starting with the January 1st, 2023. We have on some of our other dashboards, we have a specific to now, so you can set the start date and leave the end date open. Right now, we don't have that. So what I'm going to put out, it will probably go to January 1st to the end of the year. And I'll update those links at some point when we get that implementation done of the specific to now option that we have on some of the other dashboards. I put in a ticket for developers to add that on a future release. So once you get past January, if you're using the save link and you save it yourself, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment, you may need to adjust that end date as time marches on till we get that taken care of. But that brings us back to the performance by time metric. This is showing you just a trending by time. I've got the three measures here. NIMSQL Airway 01 is endotracheal is the blue line. Airway 18 is the red line, and Respiratory 02 is the yellow line. If you want to dig into any one of these individually, it's pretty easy to manipulate these dashboards to show you what you want. You can see I've crossed out some of these already, so they don't get shown. But if I wanted to compare my NIMSQL 01 tracking with any of the benchmarks, in fact, let me add a benchmark. Some of the states have allowed us to share these benchmarks, and they're available within the platform. So I'm not showing you anything that isn't available anyway. I'm going to go ahead and add the Florida benchmark just so we have something different to look at here. And you'll see it first populate up here. I got a bunch of data to crunch with that January 1st date of 2023 date. So it does take a little spinning. There we go. Now we're seeing the Florida benchmark compared to the national benchmark. But now I want to come down here and say, okay, now I want to see how my NIMSQL, my Airway 01 measure compares to the Florida benchmark. And I'll pull these other ones out just by clicking on them. And that clears that up then for me. So I have a very defined widget now without having to make a bunch of adjustments, go change things, get rid of things. But you can, again, select which measures you want to show by the drop down, very similar to the drop downs up above. Again, can be exported as a chart, can be exported as a CSV file. Now I want to dig into a really powerful tool that there's so much you can do with the Data Explorer, and this is one of those widgets where it can be dangerous diving into because there's so many different things you can do with it that can lead you to go, what am I looking at anymore? But the Data Explorer widget is kind of a choose your own adventure widget we put in. When we very first started biospatial, we were building a lot of new widgets saying, a state would say, I want this and compare this to this. So we would build a widget specific to that. And finally, it's like, we should just build a flexible widget that'll show us lots of different things. So we built this Data Explorer widget. Now, what I'm showing right now with the Data Explorer widget, I'm gonna come over here to this pencil icon that will show you our widget settings. I'm just simply showing a vertical bar chart, showing me counts by event date for the Airway 01 metric. The different thing I'm doing here is I'm showing a differential of 1 month. So this is comparing month over month performance here now. And let me just, since we're still in October, let me look at September. So in September, we had, compared to August, there were 15 more falses. So there's 15 more times we had hypoxia hypotension issues. There were 2 less trues, and there were 10 more unknowns compared to the month before. Now I can change that to a percentage. So you're not just looking at numbers, because maybe total numbers were down too. Now I can look at percentages and say, okay, now we had a change. We had 4% less. We had a 4% increase in false, a 0.42 decrease in true, and a 1.29% decrease in the number of unknowns compared to the previous month. So that's just giving you a month-to-month comparison. Now, what I did here is I kind of took a shortcut with this one, and I'll show you the way to do it that's probably a little more proper. But I got an unknown if relevant and not reported. Those things are mostly measures that just had nothing to do with this. These are records that had nothing to do with this measure. So we get a lot of noise in here. I can come over to our search parameters and come down to a performance measure filter. Say, okay, pull me up Airway 01 endotracheal. Now, when I apply this, the only records that are being shown on the dashboards are records that met the Airway 01 endotracheal denominator. You see all those unreporteds and the true and the unknowns have gone, or the unreporteds and the not applicable ones all go away on that now. The issue with using this criteria over here on the search performance, the performance measure filter, is now every dashboard, every widget is now using that denominator. So it will mess up your other measures if you're starting to query over here on your benchmarks to display. So I use this when I am essentially working with the Data Explorer widget. I'm trying to dig into a very specific thing that I want to look at related to a performance measure. Otherwise, I leave it alone, and I don't use that search criteria. Any questions on that? Or anything you want me to dig into further?
If we build a widget, depending on our state, right, we can save it and share it with others across the state.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it depends on if the state grants that access.
Yep.
And we share it across national or just within state?
So can I put a pin in that, Bill? I'm going to come back and talk about saving searches here and our URLs that we can share, and
Okay.
explain a lot of that then, if you don't mind. That's really good. We're going to talk about sharing queries and saving queries and shaving queries here in a little bit. Excuse me. So I kind of want to, I'll dig into that then. Really the last widget on this table then is our performance table widget. And that is just showing you the raw numbers. You can see all these different benchmarkings and the numerators available. Now we do have low count suppression, and I have disabled that for this demonstration because we're not digging anything that's really single case specific. So I disable low count suppression, but you can also enable low count suppression to mask anything between accounts of 1 through 9. And really there's nothing, because I'm doing such a broad swath of data here. I don't think anything is showing up that way right now. But since, again, to have even access to this dashboard, you have to be granted operational access. Most time you're going to operate with the low count suppression off. And that low count suppression is by this filter button up here. I didn't have a good way to show what suppression looks like. But if you come on and you see a bunch of hash marks and it says suppressed, that's because low count suppression is active. You can click on this funnel icon up here, turn the background blue and apply it, and that'll get rid of the low count suppression. So I'm going to do a short pivot here. Get rid of that. And now I want to look at those pediatric cases, because that's the other part of the collaborative measures, is looking at the patients 17 years of age or younger. So now I'm going to do a change my age. Oops. I'm going to do a none. And I'm going to do a maximum age of 17. And apply that. Now I just created a new query that'll load up here. And there may be other adjustments I want to make. Maybe I want to do something different, the Data Explorer widget. Maybe instead of this, I want to go to a, I haven't done this, so we're going to see what this looks like. And this is actually showing a temporal trends year over year. Let's see what that looks like. So yeah, this is a badly thought out plan, but it just gave me counts here. But there's adjustments I can make to show year over year counts and this type of charting. Should have thought that out better, but now I want to make these changes. I make changes in my performance records table. I make changes in my query. I'm going to want to save that so I don't have to go back and redo it. So to save a query, you can click this little disk drive. For those old enough to remember what disk drives are. I'm going to change a query here now and say this is pediatric. And when I set these up, I set this up initially as a private query, so only I have access to it. But I can set this up as an organizational query and have this now show up for all the users in my organization. So if I'm part of Joe's ambulance service and my service director has access, my medical director access, I have a QA, QI person has access, maybe my executive director has access. If I save this organizational query and they all have access to the platform, they can see that query too and use that, so they don't have to go recreate the wheel to have the same query. The other thing I do is I can subscribe to this. So if this is something you're looking at on a monthly basis right now, you can subscribe to this and we'll send you a PDF every first of the month with these dashboard settings that you put together. And you'll be able to look at those every month that way, not have to log in the platform. But if you see something like, oh, why did unknowns go up so much this month? Then you can come in, open up your query and dig into those things. I'm going to update that. I'm going to save new. That's a new one. So to open save queries, a couple ways to do. If I just want to work with the queries I have saved, I can come down to this drop down by the file folder and I can see all the different queries I have put together over time. If I want to look at all queries available to my system, I'm actually logged in as joe.farrell right now. So that's where you can see all these ones where I have the ability to toggle whether they're organization or private. But there's this demo user one guy too that has created quite a few queries that I could also open up and use too. And that's me. I can also subscribe to those too, even though they're not mine. And I can also set a default. So this NIMSQA Airway Adult Collaborative one is the one I want to open up every time I come to this dashboard. I can set that as a default query. And when I log in and come to the performance dashboard, this will be the specific query that loads on my dashboard. Now, what Bill mentioned a little bit ago too, is that you can save and then share these queries. We have a little link here that if you click on that, it's going to copy a link to your dashboard, or I'm just going to copy a URL to your clipboard. You can then paste that into an email and send it to somebody, and then they could use the same query. I want to throw a couple caveats on this though, is that they only get access to the data they have access to. So if you select a specific agency up here and say, I'm a one legacy EMS, that's the one I'm doing this query on, and you send it to somebody that's not part of one legacy EMS, when they open on it, they're not gonna see any data because they don't have access to one legacy EMS. So like for a state, what we tell the states a lot of times, they're gonna send out a query, leave this wide open, copy that URL, and then as Joe's ambulance service, I click on that URL, this dashboard is gonna load, and since I only have operational access to Joe's ambulance service, this box is gonna be specific to my agency's information. I won't see anybody else's information. I'll pause if there's any question about that, because sometimes that's a little hard to get your head around. All your query settings will save, but you only get access to the data you are allowed to have access to. See, I always assume when it's quiet like this, either I did a really great job or I have lost people and nobody even knows what to ask anymore. That's really it for the dashboard. The EMS performance dashboard is a pretty straightforward and simplish dashboard. Like I mentioned here with the Data Explorer widget, you have lots of options to look at data in different ways here. It's sometimes easy to get queries put or get displays that don't mean anything sometimes, but it's just it's a learning curve with it of going in and saying, okay, this is what I'm gonna look at. Show me these things, and then seeing if it makes sense. I did not fill an entire hour here, but I really don't know what to show you unless there's questions.
Yeah.
Joe,
Yeah.
I do have a quick question for you. So one of the things that we found in using biospatial, I'm in Pennsylvania, is that we often feel like we have cases that, for example, say there's an entitled value on a patient after they got intubated, but sometimes that doesn't always translate over into biospatial, and we just have like, I think the folks are often a little concerned about like, hey, why are we missing this data, or why did this fail out? Even, I put in my end title value, but it's not translating from EMS charts over to biospatial. And I think a lot of people get concerned about the unknowns and what that all means. And so I was just wondering if you could just talk about some strategies to, cleaning up our data, because this is very powerful. This allows us to very quickly get great data and in a easily digestible manner. But we just sometimes feel a little frustrated about, we're not sure that it's completely the best data that we can get.
Yeah, Chris, I feel your pain there. Yeah, I do. I'll give a couple examples. This is one of the things I think is powerful about biospatial, because what you're seeing in the biospatial platform is whatever it is that got submitted to the state. So, and sometimes that is different depending on the mapping of what you're seeing locally. And I'll throw out this example. When we rolled out, Florida has a performance measure having to do with taking stroke patients to stroke care facilities. And we had an agency contact us right after we rolled out that performance measure saying, you guys are showing 0% of our calls are going to the stroke care facility. We mostly transport to one specific hospital, and that hospital is a stroke care facility. So then we dig into the XML to look at what data elements are being submitted. We found out there was a mapping issue with their EPCR software, which the right hospital was not being selected as a destination facility. Locally, they were seeing it. They saw that hospital showing up on their EPCR software. That's what they were picking when they ran reports locally. That's what was showing, but what was getting sent to the state was not accurate. So if you guys have some examples, I would look at that XML and see what was actually sent. But we'd be happy to work with you and your vendor trying to figure out what's going on if your data is not being reflected accurately.
That would be awesome. If you could provide an email, that would be, I think, a big help, because we have one of our agencies is participating and we want to be able to, help them get some valuable data. But I feel like they're going to end up just being frustrated having to pull things manually.
Yeah, we don't want that. That's why we exist, so you don't have to do that stuff manually.
Awesome, thank you.
Put our help desk email in the chat right now. Let me make sure I spelled it right. There. So always best to just hit out the help desk. That way, if I'm out of the office or traveling, or Josh Walters, which a lot of you probably have met too. Josh Walters, our COO. He's also a electrical engineer that works with the development team. The two of us ones will most commonly answer emails and follow up with you, but sometimes we are both tied up and somebody else will grab it then, so it doesn't just sit and wait for our inbox to get cleared out. But yeah, I'll be honest, when I started working with biospatial, I thought, well, we'll get data cleaned up and everything's going to be smooth sailing after that. It's like, nope, there's always a new something, other brush fire to stomp out. Oh, that didn't go through. Bill hijacked my
Yeah.
Bill hijacked my chat earlier. Thanks, Bill.
Always here to help.
There we go. Now it's going to the group and not just Bill.
Oh yeah, I love when that happens. I often make that mistake. That's a Zoom fail though. I feel like that's something that is like a system change that needs to be made, because it happens to me all the time.
I do feel maybe Zoom is trying to protect you from yourself and not send an email out or a message out to everybody that you intended to go to one person, but I didn't realize I had to change the setting.
Yep. Any other, not only questions, but suggestions, thoughts, feedback? And Joe, I would not worry about not filling a whole hour. The hour was for the opportunity for questions and discussion, and no one's going to complain about an extra 20 minutes to, maybe go play around with their reports that you just showed them, or get something to eat before that next meeting. So if there are no other questions, just thanks, Joe, for taking the time. And for that saved report, that will just be available to users once that's up there. How does that get shared?
Let's touch base on how you want to share that.
Okay.
I send it to you if you want to distribute that. I just
Okay.
need to make a couple changes, and I will
Okay.
kind of do a tag on if you're using our platform and you're like, boy, it'd be nice if this platform did X.
Right.
Send that to us, because I've been working with biospatial since 2017 now, and most of what is in the platform has been because users saying we need this. The whole transport
Right.
dashboard is because of California, Georgia, and some specific users saying we need to be able to do these things. Can you help us out? So let us know what you need, because we're always looking for new ideas and ways to make this more useful, so you have a one-stop shop to take care of the issues and not have to pull stuff manually, because that is horrible. Well, thanks again for the opportunity today. I really appreciate everyone's participation.